and making sure it doesn't repeat the audio like last time, because that's always fun. Because then you gotta explain, oh shoot, I gotta edit this.
Right.
But anyways, welcome to Daydreams, the live interactive podcast. Hello, Miss Desiree. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you're doing fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Dylan. It's great to be here, joining you on the West Coast, here on the East Coast. Little Georgia action meets Nevada. I like it. I like it.
That's the beauty of the podcast, right?
That's
Especially
right.
doing it remotely.
Exactly.
Sometimes when I've tried to get guests on, I've been, hey, you want to be a guest on my podcast? And they're like, is it remote? Like, do I have to come join your studio? I was like, if I had a studio, that would be awesome, but no.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Meet me at my production studio. I'll have my staff grade you, do your makeup. Be great.
Right. My receptionist, everything. We'll
Yeah.
have a whole
Welcome
prep
yourself to the
sheet.
caviar when you walk in.
Yeah, the whole prep sheet going,
That's
Q&A
right.
answers, just say this, stay on script and everything will be
That's
fine.
right.
Gosh, if only. I don't think I could do the question and answer. I,
Mm-hmm.
I just,
Yeah.
it's, I don't know. I've been a guest on podcasts where I've had to like structure it. Like I've had to structure my responses. And it's so hard.
I think it's more work
It's
to
way more work.
feel less authentic. So
Yeah, because
yeah,
you can't just chill. You can't just have a conversation.
yeah. Being present, I think, is where you get the most, right?
Dialogue, yeah.
The most honesty, the
Yeah,
most.
I think so. It's worked out the best for me. I
I
mean,
think so.
I'm not the most organized person in the world, so to sit there and try to come up with like a rap sheet of questions of information to ask people on a
Yeah,
podcast, and then I have to run it by them and see like,
right,
usually I just ask, is there anything you want to stay away from? Usually it's the politics, so we stay away from the
right.
politics, and totally get that. I try to be respectful of those things. Um,
Hmm.
but if guests want to go all full in on politics, that's a
Right.
different story. We go
Well, and
for it.
you live stream your show,
Yeah.
right? So it's live. So there's the whole, experience of being able to be with us right now and not necessarily edit it, although you could edit it later, right?
So I do edit it for TikToks, and I don't like edit clips out like or place little bits in where I may have messed up a word. Like what you get is what you get. If I messed up a word, I slurred a word, I said something stupid, it's gonna be what it is at this point. So there's no editing involved to it. I just hope people see that it's a genuine effort. Like man, it's an hour long. Of course I'm gonna mess up. I'm gonna slur. Like I it's 8 o'clock right now,
Yes.
and like I said before, my coffee is wearing off, so my
Hmm.
brain cells are slowly dying out.
So you don't replace in your coffee cup a different liquid libation in there. You don't just like throw some
I'm like,
Irish cream or Bailey's or whatever else into your coffee, mix it up.
no. Actually, surprisingly, I'm not much of a drinker. I don't like drinking all that much, just because I don't know. I've never been a taste. I never liked the taste of it.
Yeah, it actually doesn't taste very good,
Yeah, it doesn't tickle my
especially on its
fancy.
own.
Yeah,
Nah,
I
not so
like
much.
I like the stimulants. I like coffee. I like caffeine. Caffeine
Yeah,
is good. Caffeine is really good, especially when you're trying to
I'm with
stay
you.
productive. Well, tell me about yourself, Miss Desiree.
Yeah, so it's an interesting world these days.
Isn't it?
Yeah, so grew up in California, so through and through. My family is all from Hawaii, actually, predominantly. And then I went to UC San Diego for school and studied political science. Fancy that. We just talked about, hey, skip politics. What did you study? Politics. Um, but I didn't go into politics like many of my friends who ended up being attorneys, lawyers, lobbyists, all kinds of other fun things. I was so rogue and I became a consultant.
It's a
so,
good path, especially
yeah,
now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and in an area that is pretty fascinating, which actually everyone, whether you like it or not, is experiencing because it's healthcare.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then a few years ago, I started my own private practice of coaching, because I just think it's fascinating how we're taught to focus on a career, right? Like if you were meeting someone right now, just right hanging out at dinner or at a bar, one of the first things that you would probably ask someone is, "So what do you do? What do you do
Mhm.
for a living?" It's an icebreaker. It's common. It's a way to find hopefully common ground with somebody, and it's predominantly where we spend most of our life, right? Is figuring out how to make money to sustain whatever lifestyle that you're choosing. But what I found, because the first type of coaching that I got into when I got into the consulting space was performance coaching. So on top of career, it's not just starting your career; it's growing it, making more money, becoming more successful, achieving more. And there's an particularly in America, there's an achievement oriented society. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think what you start to learn when you explore yourself further is that so much of your fulfillment, your sustainment, your joy comes from everything that is not that. And
Right.
that's part of the reason why I got into coaching that was more transformational life, because it's really about harnessing everything that makes you who you are, which is a lot more holistic than just how you maintain an income. Um, it's been pretty fascinating,
That is.
especially in this time when a lot of people, I think, whether it was intentional or not intentional, have had to go inward in a lot of
Right.
ways.
I think we're restructuring things right
Hmm.
now. And we have David joining in. Dylan never messes up. Yeah, of course I do. um, I think we're really restructuring things. I, there's just, it seems like there's been a cultural shift. And correct me
Hmm.
if I'm wrong, and maybe you've noticed something, that supports this or contradicts this, but it seems like there's been a cultural shift where there's no longer the desire to work the 9 to 5 until, you start when you're 21 or you graduate high school or college, and then you work pretty much till 65, retire, and then have 15 plus years until you pass. It's like,
Hmm.
I think we've kind of woken up from that stage in, for the better or worse. Obviously, I think it's for the better. I think people have adjusted to that mindset, and we're still figuring out how we can move forward in that new cultural shift of, you know, I don't want to wake up and spend the rest of my life doing the same thing over and 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 over again. It's so repetitive. And I think that model worked in the past, but
Hmm.
through technology and especially with this pandemic, I think a lot of people have taken a step back to kind of redirect themselves and to find a different a different path forward. Does that
Yeah,
seem like it aligns a little bit?
I think it aligns a lot because uh, what you do, just like we were talking about, what you do for a living isn't your identity. It's a part of who you are. It's not
Right.
who you are, right? Like think about, people who well used to, I guess, maybe go to a physical office, and maybe now it's a virtual one. Do you know your coworkers? Like, do you know all the other dimensions of them? I mean, unless maybe you became really close friends with them,
Right.
you know what else is going on in their lives. But otherwise, you're mostly focused on what it is you're there to do together in that space, in that same niche, in that world. But people are dynamic. They're more than that. They've got hobbies, they've got interests, they've got. And today, and maybe it's because of what I'm exposed to, people are and I, I'll acknowledge that I think the pandemic is a part of that, but they're tapping into, arguably what you might call their entrepreneurial spirit, and even if they're not maybe if it doesn't necessarily start that way because it's not that everything has to make money. You're not trying to necessarily monetize everything, but you certainly can. I mean, you could
Right.
take something that is more of a casual interest and turn it into money these days because we do have, you know, the online market, and there's just so many more ways to do that these days than existed before. I mean, certainly before than when I was a kid or a
Absolutely.
teenager. It's the opportunities are so much more vast and so much more broad that we were totally in a different time. So going back to your point, um, yeah, I don't think that staying in one lane or doing one thing is where many people feel like they can thrive. I think thriving looks a lot more expansive and a lot more robust than just the, like you said, 9 to 5.
Right. And I think we're seeing a lot of this right now, especially as the consequences of the pandemic sort of play out. We're seeing a lot of people that just are not returning back to jobs. And, a lot of people are debating on the causes of that, whether it's non adequate pay, whether it's, supplements coming in. But I think it's deeper than that. I think people don't want to return to these mundane activities that, they can. I mean, like you said, people have hobbies. There's so much more than what their careers are. And they don't
Hmm.
want to just wake up, grind out a job just to pay bills. Like that just seems so boring and repetitive. Like I think
Hmm.
people are actively looking to pursue meaning in their life.
Hmm.
And that's where I think you come along very well, because you're like, well, hey, let's figure out what your experiences are. Let's figure out where your interests lie so we can help find meaning. Because that's the whole point of this all, right?
Hmm.
We're trying to find meaning in what we do. Like, at the end of the day, on average, I probably have 85 years. Maybe 79. Sorry. 79. Less than
Right.
that.
Yeah.
On
Well,
average.
and here's the thing about it. None of that is even promised or guaranteed, right?
Right.
There's science, there's trends, and there's things that tell us if you do this and you follow these steps, if you're a woman and you do these things, you'll live this long. If you're a man and you do these things, you'll live this long. But as we've seen with things that we can't control, like a pandemic, yeah, you could have 6 months, you could have a year. And so people are recognizing, that you don't in some ways have a choice how much that longevity is. But what you can control is with the time that you're here, the awareness that you have, the choices that you're making, and the fulfillment that you're achieving.
Right.
Right. And that is what, when I have clients or having these conversations about what is it that makes you happy, what makes you feel fulfilled, the answers are not like, oh, my work. It's part of, maybe there's something dynamic there, but it's a lot of things that what I tend to uncover are things that people haven't tapped into fully. Their thoughts and their feelings, but that's why they're talking to a coach or depending on what it is that people are looking for. I mean, it could be a therapist, it could be a coach, it could be basically somebody who can have an outsider's view to their world, to ask them questions that they don't take the time to answer themselves. Because to the very point that we're having, people get in a routine that's mundane and you kind of get stuck in that. And it's not bad, it's normal. I mean, everybody does it. But the only way to step outside of that or to tap into these other potentials or interests or desires that you have is to be intentional about it and to actually take the time to reflect and have meaningful conversations that get you to a different to get you to a different place. Because I think one of the worst things that people can do in life, and it's going to sound cliche, is to say, I regret, and you fill in the blank. I regret
Absolutely.
not, blah, 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 whatever that is.
My biggest fear is dying without purpose. And that it's like I don't want to just wake up and do the same thing every single day. Like I get it. I have to pay bills. Not a problem. Like I'll totally go pay bills. I'll totally go pick up responsibilities to take care of my family, take care of everything I need to, pay the bills. But at the end of the day, that's not what I was put here to do. Like, I wasn't put here to just sit there and collect a paycheck while I waste my life away at a desk. That has never been what I highly doubt in the history of humanity since we started these 9 to 5 that someone said, you know what? From the day I was born, my purpose and my meaning in life was to sit at this desk.
Yeah.
Wait, never, never. I guarantee no one has ever freaking said that. And I feel like your purpose right now and what you're doing is so essential in a
Mhm.
time where we're so lost as a society. We're completely restructuring things. Automation is taking over.
Yeah.
And that's why I was a huge Yang Gang supporter. Like, I loved Andrew Yang. I thought his ideas on universal basic income and, allowing people to do those things, providing that source of income so people could go out and explore the arts, the humanities, explore their hobbies, do what they want to do. I thought that that was very groundbreaking.
Yeah.
To identify automation is really what's gonna put in a lot of society. Like, it's gonna do us in. So
Oh, absolutely.
I really find what you're doing completely fascinating and essential right now.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, and there's a story behind the brand, because Born Unbreakable uh, is a culmination of experiences that really delivers a message, which is to be unapologetically you. And the point of that is, we live in a society that is very easy to get drawn to the norm.
Right.
What am I supposed to do, and where does that come from? It comes from the media. It comes from however you grew up, whether we're talking about politics, religion, your beliefs in general about things. They come from somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all had caregivers, whether they weren't your parents. They could have been other individuals that you were around that raised you, whether it's parents or other caregivers. It's school, it's the workplace, the different environments. But as you start to form, which there's scientific studies that show you're technically not an adult brain until after 24 years old. So it's a lot of life that you're basically going along, right? Trying to stay in the lines, trying to color inside. Don't break the norms, don't do something different. But at the core of who we are and what makes us unique is different. There's going to be some things we have in common. There's going to be some things that we have different. And I believe that if you do what we've been talking about and explore those things about who you are, you're going to thrive because you're embracing that. And if people get to know you and get to experience the fullest essence of you, they're going to respect that too, regardless of whether they agree with some of those things. And so, I mean, I would love to see a world where we can acknowledge both the things that bring us together, but also the things that make us unique, and have respect, for that.
Right. Do you think that the rise in anxiety and depression sort of aligns with this cultural shift?
Absolutely. Of course, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that the numbers have caught up to what they actually are, even in terms of people who are using mental health services, whether it's online or whether they're calling, they're doing Zoom, or they're fortunate enough to be in person. I think it's more because in isolation, in some ways, over the last 18 months plus months, it's kind of forced isolation. There's a lot of things as human beings that our tendency and our behaviors are to avoid. And that's the reason you pour your, and I'm a perfect example, after having been divorced twice, after feeding the beast of what we've just been discussing, or my career. That's my own personal revelation and experience of going, holy shit, like I'm repeating things because I've avoided dealing with the things that got, me to those places. So it's not bad, but you have to learn from those things in order to make different choices and to give yourself abundance and not repeat the same traumas, the same heartbreaks, the same, things that happen to all of us. Sometimes certain people it's relationships, sometimes it's career stuff. You can pick your category, but the root of it is the same. And it's being able to address the things that we tend to run away from. And I think the good news, whether people are acknowledging it or not, is by virtue of having to be more introspective, again, in a way forced, because you're like, you can't go outside, you can't do this stuff. Well, what are you going to do? You can only play video games and watch Netflix for so fucking long before
Right.
you're like, oh, what do I actually want to do with my life? What is my purpose? Those are the deeper questions that we've either intentionally or unintentionally answered, that's helping us to get more to where we need to. But in the process of that is healing that people need to do from these things that I've observed through my experiences in coaching people for over a decade that they run away from. Right. So that, I think we're dealing with that now. And my guess would be that, in the next 12 to 24 months, if we start to look at mental health, we'll start to see people actually utilizing those services, which I don't think is bad.
Right.
I think those things are good because they show that people are taking an interest in self-development, self-growth, and you're also breaking down cultural things that we're talking about, because what are certain cultures, or even I'll go so far as sex to say, like, men is a perfect example. Well, don't ask for help, don't go to therapy, don't do these things, don't, just deal with it. You're strong, you're this, you're that, that's what, again, it's society telling you, don't do these things. Don't, it'll emasculate you if you ask for help or try to diagnose your problems. But in the absence of that and understanding those traumas and those triggers and those, repeated habits and decision making, you're not doing yourself a service. And so I'm happy to see an investment that people are making more into doing that, because it's going to make for better, whole people that are actually their whole selves in the world.
Through this conversation, I've kind of come to the conclusion that life is life is easy, and you'll have the structure and you'll have the white picket fence if you just give up meaning and go along with the grain.
Mm-hmm.
It's that message, like, yeah, do I want to give up the meaning in my life for
Mm-hmm.
all that?
Well, and then and is it for the sake of your social media to fit in?
Right.
Because everyone
Right.
has the white picket fence and they do these things, so then you have to fit in.
It's that
And then
social pressure, yeah.
Mhm.
It's that social pressure to, get that job, make that six-figure salary, stand out, be better than when you were in high school, so you can come back and be like, hey, look what I did, look at all the accomplishments that I did, it wasn't for nothing. And then turns out you wake up 50 years later and you're like, holy crap, is this really what I wanted?
Yeah.
It's like you really have to go against the grain if you're searching for meaning, if
Hmm.
you're searching for purpose in life. And
Hmm.
it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And that's the one thing I think people should know. It's there's no structure. You can literally do whatever you want.
Hmm.
You can figure out whatever you want. You just have to be disciplined enough to do it.
Hmm.
You have
And
to
I,
be
and
go
and
ahead.
I and that's what I would encourage, is the same kind of autopilot that people do to wake up and go to a job, is to give that intentionality to yourself in things that are going to help you with that self discovery, whether it's journaling, whether it's meditation, whether it's more conversations that are organic like this, where you're stimulating your brain to understand different perspectives. I mean, there has to be some discomfort a little bit every day. I'm a fan of that. And I would ask, people that right now, like anybody who's listening, is how much discomfort do you have every day? And I'm not saying, wake up and be completely uncomfortable. I'm
Of
just saying
course.
that,
Of
you
course.
know, it's easy to be on autopilot. It's easy to do what everybody thinks you should do. It's and and you're the best version of yourself when it's not easy, because that means you're challenging yourself to think beyond the norm, to realize that you can color outside the lines and find a lot more joy out of that.
Yeah. Doing more.
Hmm.
Doing more and being more than who you are. And I was just having this thought the other night. Um, the times when you don't have your phone on you, and so you let your mind just kind of wander, and you sort of get uncomfortable a little bit because you're alone with your thoughts, and your
Hmm.
thoughts can go anywhere. So I was just sitting there, and I was just letting my thoughts kind of roam, and they were just going all different places. Some were positive, some were negatives, and it was that I had to take a stop and take a step back and just be like, dude, literally, I know you're not comfortable right now. Like, just be a little bit more introspective and focus on why this is like this. Why are you feeling like this? Is it because you're not doing exactly what you said you were going to do today? I think I had like set a goal for myself that day and I just didn't do it. So
Yeah.
I just got lazy and I just didn't do it. I didn't have the discipline necessary to wake up and get it done. I think it was like I just needed to edit a video. That was it. Just edited the video so I could throw it on TikTok or something like that. But just didn't do it. Just didn't feel like it. And I think things like that are okay. I've started to kind of go with the flow with things and not resist, but at a certain point, I can't constantly go with the flow because then I get taken with the stream all the way
Yeah.
down to the ocean and then I'm lost. So I'm
And you're
like,
drowning. Yeah.
yeah, and then you're drowning and you're like, well, shoot, I really need to figure this out. Like, you know, when do you go with the flow and when do you not? Like, when does discipline kick in and when should discipline take a back seat? And that was when I was like, all right, well, discipline should probably just take a back seat. I'm feeling this way. Let's just ride it out. Let's just fill it out. And then tomorrow, let's pick back up. Let's just
Hmm.
do it again. I
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been utilizing that strategy a lot. Have you noticed any trends with that in any of your clients?
Yeah. And it's such a good question, because it's not like there's the perfect answer, but I think there's um, a balance.
Right.
And it's there's certain things that when you do with discipline produce uh, better results over time. And but there's also benefits to giving yourself unstructured time, you know. So a lot of times when I'm working with someone, they're on the journey to find what that right recipe is. It's like baking a cake, you know. It's like you oh crap, I put in too much of this. Okay, I got to take some of that out. Okay, I think I need to add some of this. And I think everyone's recipe, everyone's cake is going to be a little bit different. And so I wouldn't just say, do it like this and everybody wins, because it's also designed around the lifestyle that you want,
Right.
right? There's some people who need a particular level of structure because there's other human beings they're responsible for. So some of that is dictated when you have children, or when you have a staff of people, or and then there's some people where there isn't somebody depending on me. So I could wake up and have a different day every day, and it wouldn't affect anything. you know I think the structure when it comes to things like, you know exercise, journaling, or meditation, or certain things that basically give you fuel that enables you to have the capacity and the ability to do other things. Those are the things that I would probably put in a certain category of to figure out your discipline with,
Right.
right? Like exercise,
Like
well,
that's baseline, base discipline.
yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. But I'll also argue, and that's why, I love uh, principles from one of the favorite books, and I always recommend it to people if they haven't read it, is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, because the principles they sound so basic, but they're so um, practical.
Right.
Like, don't make assumptions, always do your best, and always do your best is going to look different depending on how you feel, right? So if you're not at your health, or you didn't get enough sleep or whatever it is, then no, it doesn't make sense to do your same disciplined routine of like working out, because probably what your body's telling you need is sleep. So that is going to take precedent over the usual, right? Like, oh, but every day I always work out at 5 a.m. Well, you feel like crap, you didn't get enough sleep, or you didn't do whatever. Like, it's probably not a good idea for you to wake up and do that, because now you're going to deteriorate yourself, and that's not helpful.
See,
So
See, that was always my biggest problem with the online gurus. It was like I would see these gurus spouting this like discipline, discipline, discipline. You need to grind every day, 24/7. It's like, well, yeah, that's part of the recipe for success. But like, if I'm grinding every day for success, aren't I just contradicting myself? Like, you need to be disciplined so you don't work that 9 to 5 job. Well, then I just put myself in the same rat race with discipline now. It's like, well, why would I even do that? Like, I feel as though like for me, it's like you said, it's a balance. It's like you need to have some level of discipline to know the things that you need to get done. But on the days that I just did not feel like doing it, I didn't force myself.
no,
It's like,
you shouldn't.
that's what I had to learn for the longest time. I was like, well, I mean, obviously, if it has a deadline and I need to get it done, I probably should get it done. Discipline myself, get it done. But it's like if I have these hobbies or something, like I love playing music, right? I love playing music, and I know I should play more. I know I should play more because it helps me to unwind. It helps me to enter that flow state. It helps me to just relax, and it's good for my creative side. But I sometimes beat myself up a little too much when I don't play. I'm like, oh, I should be playing more. I need to practice. I need to practice. Then I get into that stupid rat race where I'm like, well, I'm taking all the fun out of it. Like, if I don't want to do it, don't freaking do it. Like, it's like, it's not the end of the world. Like, I have tomorrow. Like, I can do it tomorrow. Like, focus on right now. Focus on your well-being. Focus on what's important. Don't focus on the grind, the discipline. Oh my gosh, that was my problem with these online gurus. They'd be like, you gotta grind, 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 grind. It's like, shut the hell up, dude. Like,
my God, it's so stressful. You're stressed out and you didn't do anything after listening to those people.
Right. It's like you're telling me that if I want to make the life that I want to have, that I have to literally trade in one level of grind from 9 to 5 to the other level of grind from 9 to 5, except now it's not 9 to 5, it's like literally 8 to 12 8 noon. I mean, sorry, not noon, midnight.
Right, exactly. What? Yeah, or it's just chopped up in different chunks throughout the day.
It's like, what? No, gosh, it feels like the message is completely lost. It's like, again, meaning. If you lose concept of meaning in what you do, then are you truly doing it anymore for value or purpose? And I always come back to that. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's like, if you don't have meaning anymore in what you're doing, what the hell is the point of it? Like, you're literally just like, if you're trying to like make $1 million, that's your goal. Fine, I'm not gonna stop you. Like, if that's what you find meaning in, sure. But I sure as hell don't find meaning in making millions of dollars. And I know that if I put my mind to it, I probably could. Start a bunch of retail properties, invest in Bitcoin, invest in the stock market, discipline myself enough to research all the different trends. I know I would be miserable. I'd be miserable, and I know what that means. I know what my future self would be like, and my future self is looking back on me right now like, dude, you're fucking crazy. Like, no, don't do this.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. I have a big problem with all that. I really do. And that's why I can't reiterate enough that I think what you do is so essential and so important, especially with the cultural shift that's going on. I just find it. Daydreams dislikes hard work. No, I promise. No, I don't. Gina and Jordan joining in chat as well. And Gina saying men were taught that real men don't cry when they are holding back and natural emotions as women. Men are taught that real men. Did you put the same thing twice? It creates a
It was
pressure
trying to
cooker.
reiterate a point.
Yes, people put so much pressure on each other that it either fits in or what, or to be somebody that they figure out they are human beings and not a robot. Oh, yes, yes, mother. That's my mom joining in chat. Um,
Fantastic. I love it.
I never understood the trading in one discipline for the other. Just
Hmm.
like, unless you find meaning in it, obviously.
Yeah.
Unless you
Yeah.
find meaning in it, and you know, for example, like if I'm trading in my job, my 9 to 5 job, for like I want to go all out on streaming, or I want to go all out on playing music because that's my passion. I understand that. But the consequence of that is people like Ed Sheeran, where they literally lived on the street for years until they made it. Like,
Hmm.
that's the consequence of that. So, to not assume the consequences, or to be naive enough to not think that there are not consequences for, and again, the consequences don't have to be negative, but to not assume that the consequences, can't impact you negatively or positively, then I don't know. The whole thing to me is just, it's still mind boggling.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so fascinating because I did this exercise, and I'm in a mastermind. So we meet every week on Wednesday mornings at 5:30 a.m. Um, I'm West Coast time. And one of the exercises was finding your zone of genius.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, it's kind of the best of all the worlds is the point of it. So you basically say, okay, well, what am I passionate about? Right now, your passion could be music, right? It could be something like that. And then the second question is, what am I good at? What am I skilled at? Now, it could very well be that those two things are one and the same. Like, you might like to do music, you might not be that good at doing music, right? So then that's where the practice comes in, and then you become Ed Sheeran or
Right.
whatever, but
Right.
it could be that my passion is music, but I'm really good at computers. I don't know, I'm just making up something, and then the third question is, okay, well, what could I get paid to do? And this is where, you're trying to bring all the best of those worlds together. And essentially, when you can find your zone of genius, and again, maybe it's not your entire livelihood, but maybe it's some of your livelihood where you're good at something, you actually enjoy doing that something,
Right.
and you can monetize it a little bit. There's probably some good in that. I think there's some people that do it to its fullest extent, and I think it's okay if you do that to a lesser extent, but that's, one prospective way to get some of that balance, because I meet a lot of people too that, they might do a job that they're really good at, but they don't really like doing it. They're just good at doing it, and they make a lot of money doing it, but they're not like waking up every day going, oh my gosh, like I could do this all day, it's my favorite thing ever.
Absolutely. And Dell's in chat. I know he's gonna he's gonna flame me tomorrow when he's like, see, I've been telling you this for years. Because he's been saying that to me. It's like, find out what you like to do, and then find out what you're good at, and then align those two and figure out how to monetize that. And so for the longest time, I was like, well, let's figure out what I like. Well, I really like psychology, and turns out I'm pretty decent at talking. So let's start a podcast or go teach at a school. So it's been an interesting ride, and he'll probably flame me tomorrow because he's been saying the same things, and it's really interesting to kind of see how that's played out.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's not perfect. I think it's the question is, how does it make you feel? Right? Like, how does what we do every day make us feel? Does it give us anxiety? Does it make us angry? Does it make us happier? Does it make us more depressed? I mean, that's a real thing, right? So
Absolutely.
that's another gauge. I think there's the utility of something like, okay, we live in a world where we do need money to do things. You need money to pay bills and to be able to have a livelihood, but then there's your how you feel about what it is that you're doing, and that's where we get back to purpose. And so, all of that, there's relevancy in all of it, but those are all factors that we have to take into consideration. And the other thing I would say for anyone listening is give yourself the grace and give yourself the permission to reevaluate. Just because, you felt a certain way in 2019 doesn't mean you're going to feel the same way in 2021 or 2025. I mean, the point of evolving is to check in and figure out where you're at, because we grow, we evolve, and we change, and we have to acknowledge that that growth and that change is going to lead us down different paths that might be very different than what life looked like a few years ago or even a few months ago.
That's a
So
very
don't,
interesting point.
you know what I mean? Don't beat
Hmm.
yourself up because all of a sudden you're like, oh no, now I want to go do this. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's okay to reevaluate your relationships, your life, your hobbies, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because I think once people put in the time and the effort into it, they feel like they're stuck with it. They're like, well, I did all this effort, so why don't I appreciate it anymore? Why don't I like it anymore? It's like, oh, you're constantly evolving. You're a human being. You've had different experiences now. Like, you've learned a lot more. You've interacted with different people in this field and found out maybe your comfort level or the the proximity to what you're doing, maybe you're too close to it, maybe you liked the distance before. So I think that's an interesting point that you make, that we should reevaluate some of the things that we once, or we thought we liked, maybe we don't like anymore, or go back and find things that we didn't like before and figure out, maybe is there an area of interest now.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We're not static,
Yeah.
you know?
We have Gina saying Grayville see many athletes pulling back to take care of their mental health. Sorry for the typos.
Yeah. I mean, look at Simone Biles and how much, there are people who supported what she did for being able to take a mental look at where she was at. And then there are people who criticized her for what she did because they're saying, well, you're an athlete. You need to be able to do this, like show up, do your events, do the Olympics. But you don't know what it's like to be Simone Biles. I mean, or any other athlete we could talk about right now. So it's you again, it goes back to identity. Just because you're an athlete doesn't mean you don't have the permission to have mental health check with yourself and
Right.
to do what you need to do to take care of yourself, because it's probably because of all the years that you've spent so much time doing the ultimate things that so many of us didn't do to train ourselves in that way, that they've gotten to a certain place mentally that needs some attention.